Hi there. In this video, I'm going to give my ranking of the 10 episodes in House of the Dragon Season 1 relative to each other. Because they were all good. There were no bad episodes, just some of them were really great. They were standouts. And to vary this up, I'm going to present it in the tiers format. I'll explain the specific context of how I'm applying that. Now, this is actually the second video in a series of 3 I'm making, though you can watch them out of order, in which I'm giving my retroactive overview and assessment of Season 1 as a whole. That it made more sense to break it up along 3 themes. That first video is the few criticisms I had of Season 1 as a whole. Video 2 here is, okay, I'll make a ranking of the episodes. Video 3 is going to be going over the improved cinematography that I really like, that there were cinematography problems on the old show. This show is doing it the right way with cinematography. Oh, I should probably give a brief summary of what were my major concerns. They're not even criticisms, because they affect the episode ranking. 2 things were, you always need to worry when you're writing gray characters like Walter White, Tony Soprano, Daemon, Rhaenyra, Alicent, that they can't be heroes or villains. That's the whole point. I actually think Season 1 achieved that, but it's a constant balancing act through the end, that you don't want to have, like, Saint Tyrion by the end of the Game of Thrones run, the later seasons, where he stopped being the gray character that we really liked in the early seasons. So that's a constant concern, but I think Season 1 did a good job on it, particularly because there isn't a novel as a source material. It's an outline. And so much of the specific stuff in terms of dialogue, specific plot elements they had to work in themselves was quite an achievement. The one thing which went from concern to criticism a little, not much, was just they needed 3 more episodes. George R. R. Martin himself, the writers themselves on it have agreed with Martin that he made the whole blog post. We needed 13 episodes this season to deal with the time skips. But we know they were fighting with the studio over when do we start telling this story. So I don't blame them for that. That when HBO was doing this under Carly Ray, when they first tried 3 years ago, they wanted to start with Viserys' death. Ryan Condal was the one fighting for, we need time skips to show the relationship of Rhaenyra and Alicent across 20 years, why these factions form the way they do. So they were fighting for that. I'm on their side. They wanted more episodes too, but it affects certain things in there. I made this video mostly as a reaction to that I saw winteriscoming.net made an episode ranking, and I generally agreed with their highs and lows, pretty much the same here, and I think you'll agree too. But they weighted against episodes 5 and 6 for the time skip stuff that, like Kristen doesn't get punished for things, which we know is because in the books it was a tournament, and they should have had another episode explaining that. Martin himself said we should have shown Rhaenyra falling in love with Harwin, Daemon with Laena in the Free Cities, had we had another episode in there, but we didn't. And we were fighting over that with HBO. That I understand that, and I liked episode 6, that knowing that they're not going to address that, because there were screeners out, we already knew that. And it's that whole double jeopardy thing of they were blaming episodes 5 and 6 for not addressing the Kristen stuff. And look, it's a macro level criticism. I haven't forgotten about it, but it doesn't affect my ranking of individual episodes, because I know they had this difficult task of, it's not even a novel, it's an outline and has time skips in it. How do we juggle that? I think they had a Herculean task, and they did pretty well. So points some people may have taken off for how they handle time skips, that's a separate category for me. That's not the episode in and of itself. And you might disagree, but that's generally how I stand on that. Now, how am I applying the tiers system? This started out with video games, and I know it's kind of different for different things, but this is how I'm applying it. That a category is, I can't think of how to improve it. That there is nothing I would fix. So in a glass half full type of thing, I honestly can't suggest anything I would change about an episode. I'll give it an A ranking. S ranking, like superior, is this is better than I could have even thought of. And it elevates the source material. Or sometimes one, sometimes the other, but that's a high mark for me when this is better than I could have thought of. It's better than the source. This is a standout episode, and a couple episodes ranked that this season. Then you have A, which is I wouldn't improve anything, and below that you have B, which is this is good to great, but there's one or two scenes, maybe three aspects, which I can think of a way to improve on that or fix it. They're not giant disaster problems, it's just that line was a little clunky, or that scene didn't play right, or I would have changed the dialogue up a little to be a little clear. Nothing in House of the Dragon Season 1 ranked below B. By the way, there are no pluses or minuses. There's no B plus, B minus. You're either in a category or you're not. That S category for superior, that is A plus. So there's just S, A, there's no plus, minus. For the sake of completion, because I might apply this another year, below B, and nothing got C, D, and F for me. C is there are multiple things that need improvement, but much of the episode was presentable at best. And then on the other side of that, you have D, which is this was a mostly bad episode, but with a few nice scenes that are redeeming qualities, that it's overall bad, but I can't make it a complete write-off, because there were a few things they did pretty well, or at least competently. So you see how C is on the fence, B is there's a few things I would fix, D is there's only a few nice things to say about it. And then at the bottom you have F, which is this is a total loss with no redeeming qualities. An issue comes up with uneven episodes. How do you rank that? That you can have an A-level episode, which is, I'm not ranking it by enjoyment, but by competence. You can have a setup episode, or an aftermath character piece episode after a big episode, which is mostly dialogue-driven, not even giant dialogue scenes or confrontational things, much less battle things, but for what they set out to do, you needed these things. They're not filler. You're dealing with, like, case in point, episode 2, Rogue Prince. We needed those follow-up scenes for things. Or I'm thinking of even, like, Game of Thrones Season 3. I remember episode 5, a lot of stuff happened. Episode 6 had logical fallout from that episode needed to happen, and I thought, well, it's not that bad. It's just they can't all be giant red wedding battle episodes. But then you run the risk of, when the Sansa rape episode happened, because people were compartmentalizing, and the Dorne parts were also bad in that episode. Let's not forget, that's when it became clear the Dorne story is a disaster, too, with the non-existent fight scene there. It was terrible. Reviewers at the time actually tried to deflect because they were in denial and compartmentalized. I remember them, and I will not forgive this ever, insisting, major reviewers, but weren't the Arya and Bravo scenes really good where they show the Hall of Faces? No, that doesn't outweigh how bad this invented rape stuff is. This isn't an original story, so even going, oh, well, it's just the TV show is different, because it is based on a book, it's so weird for me for people who didn't read the books. Like, I think as a TV show, it comes out of nowhere and doesn't make logical sense. You didn't set it up well. I don't think it ever could, because you can't change the puzzle pieces like that. But there were real reviews at the time from the TV fanatics trying to deflect to, I remember them badgering me with that, focus on the good. Focus on the good. If you don't like it, get out of our comments section, from, like, fan sites that were obsessing over this. And it's just, that's how you get things like Season 8. That's how you got things like late Season 7. With the White Hunt episode, there were only two halves to that episode. As opposed to Season 5 episode with the Sansa rape, you couldn't do that with the White Hunt, because there were two plots, the White Hunt and then the incomprehensible Arya and Sansa Littlefinger and Winterfell subplot, which also was incoherent, and they actually admitted they deleted and moved around scenes, that there was nothing good to say. And like any addiction, it only stops when you hit rock bottom, that as more and more storylines were getting stupid, They just focus on the good ones until there were only a handful of good storylines left, and then there were none. And then they turn around and go, how did we get to this point that Daenerys and Jon Snow were ruined? Maybe you should have said something and they were ruining the Stannis storyline. And but you praise them. Oh, they're so brilliant with writing Dany and Jon. And yeah, the Sansa thing is a generation-defining embarrassment for a generation of television shows. If you gave this an Emmy, even though you knew it was bad, that uneven episodes we will address by using our brains. That no, a disastrous rape thing does not make up. Nothing makes up for that. That is the elephant in the room. I'm going on about this too much because there was nothing like that on that scale in House of the Dragon Season 1. There were 2 or 3 episodes where there was kind of a clunky scene or two, but the overall episode was good, which generally brings it up to B quality for me. And like I said, that you can have a 90% by runtime good episode with one scene in it so bad that overall it is not a good episode, and I would drop it from B ranking to this is C. I know only one is a problem, but it's a goddamn big problem. So you can either have a lot of small problems or one big problem are kind of equivalent to each other in my ranking here, but this is all academic, this is all abstract, because nothing ranked below a B for me. But when I get to talking about uneven episodes, you'll see why I'm ranting about this. Okay, without further delay, having established the ranking system I will be using from now on forever, how do I rank the 10 episodes of House of the Dragon Season 1? I'm starting with the great ones and moving onward because I'm hoping that anyone who has giant, deep-seated criticism of something won't stick around until the end and will wait to give a measured response. I don't want you guys typing in the comments until I finished the video, guys. I hate it when people write before we finish, because I usually address your questions later in the video anyway. Starting with Tier S, Superior. Not only could I not think of anything I would change or fix, this is better than I thought it could be, and it elevated the source material. Episodes 8, 4, and 3. 8, Lord of the Tides, with Vaemon Velaryon challenges the succession, and Viserys comes, and then the dinner scene. Episode 4 is King of the Narrow Sea, when Rhaenyra and Daemon go out into the city, all the female gaze. Wow, we filmed a sex scene that wasn't what Benioff and Weiss would do, but actually had art to it. And then the political fallout of that, Rhaenyra takes an abortion drug, Daemon and Viserys, really good scenes between them after that. All good stuff. And episode 3 was Second of His Name, with the royal hunt stuff, all of that, and all the politicking at the not just, oh, it was a hunt, but all the politicking and introducing the Lannisters, and the White Stag stuff was even introducing prophecy and magic things that were not in the source material. And then 10 minutes at the end, we have the big battle scene of Season 1 in the Stepstones. I'm not one for spectacle that much. It was a well-done action scene, don't get me wrong, and I liked that they made this. They said it was an homage to Black Hawk Down at one point. Little things they did in there. It was really pretty well done. I even saw a military expert thing on the Wired thing where he goes, oh no, this is actually pretty well done. He's using the type of dagger that can pierce armor, that arrows wouldn't be able to hit him that forcefully at that range because they're just using gravity at that point. They're not that close to him. So it generally worked. I really liked episode 3 for all of the character moments on the hunt. But what gave these S quality superior? Elevating the source material. There is hardly any source material for episodes 3 and 4. Episode 3, that entire royal hunt is pure invention, and it was really good. If we're going, oh, but it's just an outline. It's not even a full novel. Will they be able to live up to that? We were worried if the dialogue would be good in the entire show. No, episode 3 proved that we can have an invented sequence, which is really good. And of course, that Martin kept going on and on about I was cheated out of a hunt scene in Game of Thrones Season 1. I wanted that hunt scene, damn it. And they gave it to him, and it was really good. All great stuff. It was well filmed with good cinematography. I think episode 4 was probably if I had to pick one that I liked the cinematography the best in, That was the standout direction by Claire Kilner. Not even the sex scene stuff, just when they're going through. We don't really see the streets of King's Landing that much outside the Red Keep. 2 episodes, 4 and 9, which were both Claire Kilner episodes, that really filming in the streets of Caceres. And when just the camera work she does, when you see it more in behind the scenes video, that you don't think about it, that we had someone with a steady cam running in front of Millie Alcock backwards, so the dolly shot would line up right, that you could see everything is from her POV angle, that a lot of thought went into the camera work for that and the motion of it. That was probably the most impressive cinematography for me. Now, story-wise, it had a little more basis, that this was one of those unreliable narrator moments from the books, and rather than go with any of the 3 versions, they kind of did something that was between the 3 versions, that you can see how it got distorted into, did Daemon have sex with her or not? Some sources say he did. Well, it's he almost did, and then actually Kristen did it, and that isn't what either of them say, but it really works in this context. Like that they reintroduced Moon Tea as just a world-building thing, because that's what would happen. That'll, if a lord found out, was suspected his daughter was having sex, he'd do that. So, also episode 4 for introducing the Blackwood Bracken feud and showing us Storm's End, because we didn't get that in either of those things in Game of Thrones. That was a great start to the episode. So all around a solid episode, episode 4. Elevated the stuff, loved the direction. A lot of people will say episode 8 was the best. I generally do agree, but some people, when they're ranking things, oh, by a wide margin, this was the best episode of the season. Like, it's close for me. That I can. Episode 4 is up there next to episode 8 for me, very close. In terms, even though it's not that big of an action thing, the Blackwood Bracken fight happens mostly off screen. And it's mostly just dialogue and character moments, world-building things. They introduced the Valyrian glyph language, writing system. Just it was good cinematography stuff. Just it worked for me in there. But episode 8, it's the climax of everything. It's Viserys' last episode. It's reintroducing all of that, and the tension and direction in the trial scene. Great stuff there in the dinner and all that. We'll never see all the characters together again like that. This was like, as Martin has said, that everyone is together at the beginning of the story at Winterfell, all the major characters, the Winterfell feast in A Song of Ice and Fire. All the Starks, the major Lannisters, and Baratheons. And obviously Tywin isn't there, Stannis isn't there, but all that could reasonably be there, generally the main characters are there. This is the last time all the blacks and the greens are going to be in the same room together. That, obviously, like you see Otto in episode 10, even then Rhaenys wasn't in it, but, Rhaenyra and her children and Alicent and her children, that they're around. Still, while you might debate 8, 4, and 3, between them all, I'd give them all S-tier stuff superior. Like, just the way they film, and Viserys in terrible health, walking into the throne room with music. The joke that we made an old man slowly walking to the throne, exciting and drama. Well, not exciting, but drama. And he's struggling to get there and come up on the throne, which is so much the death of him, but it's his duty. And then Daemon coming with the crown, just that elevates the source material for me. Even though episode 8 out of the 3 of these had the most source material in terms of word on page, and the Vaemon Velaryon challenge their succession, and it has more basis than episode 3's Royal Hunt. They elevated it through the performances and the writing. Episode 3 was the one with this is entirely invention, and it's really good. Episode 4 with all the camera work. So these are the 3 standout episodes of the season for me. As I said, and this is going to be much briefer, Tier A is, I can't think of how I would improve this. Like I said, Episode 5 and Episode 6 I consider Tier A because the time skip stuff was a macro-scale issue. That I don't blame Episode 6 for not following through on, wait, Daemon is married to Laena now, Rhaenyra had children with Harwin, and wait, why isn't Kristen punished? Yes, taking as a given that happened, this was a really good episode, reintroducing everyone. Sapochnik himself had a good idea for, we're going to have this big tracking shot to keep everyone hooked in on the new actors, to show the scale of the Red Keep. A lot of lore stuff. They worked in, let's see, they mentioned Recalio Rendoon. They introduced Lord Caswell, who was actually a recurring character. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. Mentioned the Blackwood Bracken thing again, and just the small council scene of Rhaenyra versus Alicent was also very nice with these new characters. And the children, the child actors, I liked all of them. And the little moments they got. We got dragon stuff with Veermax. So I really liked episode 6. And episode 5, a lot of people will put points against that we don't see Kristen punished. But again, this is this hazy middle ground that there should have been an episode between them. Episode 5 was also really good with, I like how they introduced slowly that Laenor is gay. It was fun watching reaction videos to see at what point did TV-only viewers pick up on that. Like, some only pick up on it when he's literally kissing Joffrey. But some people thought, oh, when they're having their discussion on the beach, but some people like Goose and have different tastes, they didn't pick up on it. But when Corlys goes, well, he'll outgrow it. Like, none of this dialogue is in the books, but I think they handle it really well in terms of the characterization. So we had good Rhaenys and Corlys dialogue in that episode. I like that thing where he's just in the tub and Viserys is musing on, had I faced great challenges, would it have forged me into a better man? And going, well, a lot of people face challenges, wish they hadn't, and maybe wouldn't. And who knows? These philosophical, real questions they're raising there. It just remember when the seasons 1 to 4 of Game of Thrones were based on the books and actually had themes, and they're doing that here. We got to see Meleys for the first time. Everything about the wedding, some people, oh, it's spectacle. I love that kind of spectacle because it's not action, it's just world building and set dressing of all the food. And yeah, we love the food, and it'll be setting up the cookbook stuff, the costuming, and the gradual progression of the tension of, and now the Velaryons are coming in. Okay, but this is a wedding for them. Let's praise them. But then Daemon comes in, then Alicent comes in. This was just the best episode for Emily Carey, who up to that point her work had been more subtle because she doesn't yell a lot. So I think that just seeing all of her acting, and this is when she's starting to turn into adult Alicent. Great stuff there. I love the whole wedding. I love the diegetic music. Dance. We have never seen dance in this world before. And they talk about that of how do they dance? We can't make it look too contemporary like ballroom stuff. So 5 and 6, they don't elevate it, and some would take points off for the time skip stuff, but I consider those solid A's. Similarly, episode 10, The Black Queen, it's a mix of, there was more source material, so I can't say they were elevating it too much, other than the performances. Emma Darcy gave a wonderful performance. Then you take points off for there was a lot of exposition to give. Though I think they gave the exposition well by, you need to point at a map when you're talking about, these are all the great houses. Stark, Arryn, Baratheon, they might side with us, the other ones won't. Here's what we're doing at the Riverlands. It was, I'm weighing drama with exposition, with faithfulness to the books, to cinematography, and all this. There was a lot of exposition, and it, like Red Team Review really said, it didn't feel like a finale. It just felt like an episode 9. I felt like it did with the climactic fight scene. The fight was very well done by Yaitanis. Like I said, I've loved him since Children of Dune. He's a good director. It was upsetting that he was going to do 3. I don't think he got to do 3 episodes this season, because the third one, the Rogue Prince, was really, he had to pick up for Sapochnik at the last minute, but he did good stuff in episode 3, which I loved, and everything he said behind the scenes about how I worked out the dragon fight, and that you slowly see Vhagar like the T-Rex out of the rain and the clouds. Episode 10, solid A. That I would elevate. Well, they had to deal with a lot of stuff. Some people are like refining exactly how she reacts to things. Some people consider it S tier. I'd go with A tier on that. They just, the middle of the pack stuff. The one that I am really conflicted about is episode 1. That I would list that as tier A, not tier S, though I'm sorely tempted to put it in tier S, because it has the most source material. It has a lot of source material to back up. This is how Emma died, and there was a tourney. They actually combined the tourney with that. And I wouldn't change a thing. That's why it's A. Why isn't it S? Only because, very much like episode 10, it had to do a lot of exposition. And even more so than episode 10, they had to introduce so many people, there wasn't enough time to get a feel for all the characters. That, you do kind of get a feel for Daemon, Rhaenyra less so, Alicent less so. That everyone gets a little moment, even Corlys and the Small Council. I do think episode 1 was like watching a movie, like a self-contained movie the night it came out. That might as well be S tier, because it's like I was ranting about before, the difference between this is tier A, but it was a slow setup episode with character pieces, versus this is tier A. It was the very well done, exciting premiere, which had this great tournament action scene in it. Judging by did they achieve what they set out to do. Arguably, I'd go with tier S. I'm putting it for A here just for the sake of that, but embarrassment of riches, really, that some would take points off for the C-section scene. I actually think that was a mark in its favor, that they set out what they achieved to do. They wanted to show that women die in childbirth in this world, and we have not been focusing on the second class citizen status of women in this show that Game of Thrones largely ignored, even though the books did mention this type of thing, that yes, she will die in childbirth, and it's the defining, it's the tragedy that sets the story in motion of, well, who's the heir now? If you're not going to have a male heir, are you going to remarry? What's going on? But solid episode. I have seen women who love the thing saying, I just can't watch that, even though I acknowledge it was well filmed. And it's testament to the actress's performance, because you don't even see that much. So we can debate. Tell me in the comments the debate over was episode 1 A or S. I'm tempted to put S, but I'm putting A just because I didn't get a feel for many of the characters after the first episode. Through no fault of the episode, I wouldn't change anything. It's just there's only so many minutes to give an episode. So can I really fairly say that? I don't know. Well, that's a high A there. Then you get to the bottom of the pack. These are all Bs. Nothing is a C. These are B, means mostly solid, either good to even a few great moments, but there's like 2 or 3 things I would change. These include Episode 2, The Rogue Prince, Episode 7, Driftmark, and Episode 9, The Green Council. As I was saying, Episode 2 I like more in retrospect because it was the definitive example of a setup or aftermath episode that we would miss if it was absent. Though when we say this needed like 3 more episodes to deal with the aftermath of the wedding, to episode 8 should have really been 2 episodes dealing with the aftermath of stuff, that's what we got with the Rogue Prince. We needed 2 more episodes like that. That it would have been weird if we immediately cut from Rhaenyra's mother dying to then 3 years later, and here's Alicent married and having a male heir. We needed an episode, aftermath episode, dealing with Rhaenyra is still bereaved, setting up why would Viserys marry Alicent, other motions of setting up why the Velaryons are annoyed that he didn't marry Laena, which adds greater strain on you need to get an arranged marriage with Laenor in episode 5. So, like I said this at the time, they were smart enough to put out screener copies of the first 6 episodes, and everyone who saw them at the time said, episode 2 is a little slow, but having seen through episode 6, I wouldn't remove anything. That it's exposition but and setup or character arcs, but you need it. And I agreed once I had seen through the middle of the season. There were a few minor issues of pacing, not even much, just the scene transitions weren't as innovative as in episode 1 or other episodes, where the audio from one scene will bleed over into the next one. But we had heard months in advance that they switched directors at the last minute, that Sapochnik had to leave, and Yaitanis was the only person available, so he came in to do Rogue Prince based on Sapochnik's storyboards. I was worried it would be a disaster. It wasn't. It was actually pretty well done. And it's a very consistent episode in terms of quality. It's just the absence of something really innovative or cool, because Yaitanis was in there doing damage control and did a really good job. They say when you do a good job, people don't notice. That we averted a disaster by having the other director jump in. It's not like standout direction like Claire Kilner had months to plan out what she was going to do in episode 4 by her own hand and then do it. This was Yatanna said to come in and clean up the problems from Sapochnik leaving. Even then, I think he did a really good job on individual scenes. Just even for Yatannis, episode 3 was better work because it's what he had planned himself. Really, the only thing I change in episode 2, if I measure what's the difference between A and B, would I change something? That they deleted the scenes of Rhaenyra reacting to Alicent marrying her father. They have this whole scene in the Godswood. We have still shots of it. And then ends with Rhaenyra helping Alicent get into her royal wedding dress, which looks really impressive. We have still shots of this. Why would you cut that? And there's even another one of Rhaenyra helping to dress Criston in Kingsguard armor once she gets him appointed to it, which would parallel undressing his Kingsguard armor in episode 4. Like, there are other deleted scenes which you can throughout the rest of the season, which you can argue Daemon hugging his girls would make him look too emotional for the gray character we're trying to make. There are other deleted scenes, or Daemon talking, having some lines with Otto at the dinner scene. They said they filmed that, they had to cut it. I can see that the pacing would have been wrecked, but why not put in the central conflict, Rhaenyra's reaction to Alicent face to face? You're marrying my father? What, did you choose this? Did your father make you do this? They should have left that in. That I go by a case-by-case basis of when they delete scenes. That, okay, I can see why you could cut this. This is one of the cases where I'm like, why would you delete this? Some other things you do need to delete, that's understandable. I can't wait for these things when they come out with the Blu-ray. So that's why, Rogue Prince, I could even see the argument for it being a soft A. Not a, whereas episode 1, I'm like, this is a solid A verging on S. Rogue Prince is a top B verging on A, but it's a little rough around the edges from director problems, from the story's aftermath, that we need aftermath, and there were some really good deleted scenes I wish they kept in. Other than that, then we get to the uneven episodes, 7 and 9. A lot of people put Driftmark episode 7 near the top. Actually, that was problematic for me, because the first half of the episode is kind of weird. It's the second half, that everything from when Aemond lands, when he's getting the fight with the other kids, through the confrontation with everyone else, that was perfect. And even before that, like the Corlys Rainey scene inside of Driftmark, which has dialogue they pulled for the trailers, was really good. And even the visuals of the funeral itself, there's a funeral, then the wake. The funeral scene was really good. The wake was really difficult to film. I took some points off for everyone's acting is just a little off in the first half. And the camera work is a little off in the first half of the wake. But then they explain right in the behind-the-scenes thing, this was a difficult location shoot on a cliff. We couldn't get all the cameras the way we wanted to get them, and I sympathize with that, so I add the points back. Oh, okay, it was a difficult location shoot. And then everyone's acting a little off. They explained, this was literally the first episode we filmed. The funeral scene, the wake scene, was the first thing we filmed. The confrontation was filmed later. Because they said, this was a clever idea that Condell had, that people act weird at a funeral and don't know what to say. So taking as a given that whatever we film as the first episode that we do, the actors' rhythm and pacing and ability to play off each other just won't be as refined as it will be later. Make the funeral the first thing, it'll cover up how weird they're acting. I'm thinking specifically like when Daemon is talking to Viserys at the wake. The timing is a little off to me, to my ear or something, but it kind of works that Daemon would be a little off, because you can see he's bereaved. So that was smart planning, that everyone's going to be acting a little off, then make it in the funeral episode. That works. And filming difficulties, so I add points back that there were extenuating circumstances, right? That makes sense. I take points off again, though, for the lighting problems they had, the day for night lighting problems. There's really 3 scenes. There's the sex scene you could keep in the dark because it's a sex scene, but even the Vagar thing, on the one hand, I want better lighting. On the other hand, we're trying to cover the CGI budget. But the long Rhaenyra Daemon beach scene, it looked really odd, even though it's a mostly dialogue-driven scene. And it's never so dark you can't tell what's going on, and it is supposed to be the dead of night. and not have torches around. It looked a little weird, and they used it too much. And the fact that Ryan Condal himself was in magazines said, the Master Prince looked better than what came out on TV. It's not nearly as bad as Season 8 Game of Thrones problems. That was filmed at night as the director was yelling at them, for God's sake, if you film this at night with no lighting, it'll be darkness. Versus this is they filmed it in the day and they just applied the day for night color filter a little too hard. Different problem entirely. I hope they remaster it for the Blu-ray or something, but a few points off it, even Sapochnik himself has filmed good night scenes in Season 1. He's even filmed good night scenes in this episode, like the Corlys Rainey scene is just lit by a fireplace, and it's well lit, well filmed. He knows what he's doing. It was a specific problem they had with, they were trying to cover up a continuity error or something. So I take some points off for that. At the time, we were shocked at what Laenor faked his death. I warmed up to it as a clever twist on the unreliable narrator thing, though that does raise the ongoing question of, well, someone else is going to claim his dragon in Season 2, a different character from the books. How are you going to address that? But that's a Season 2 problem, not a this episode problem. That's one of those macro-level things, that this is a story arc, not the one episode as a given is given that as a task. And of course, and you could say it elevated it with that Alicent never directly charges Rhaenyra like that in the books, and yelling at her that the stuff she's bottled up, that I'm the dutiful wife and you always get to, I sacrificed my youth for marrying an old man, and you're the one just going off openly having bastards, and you never suffer consequences for anything. That was a really good scene. This is why I've been ranting about what do you do when there's an uneven episode. Where the first half was, the pacing, camera work was weird, even though there was a good reason for it to be weird. I mean, it was just, as opposed to, we kind of forgot. It was, no, there were extenuating circumstances, which I fully sympathize with, and the ending was really good. It was a little uneven. Even though, I liked the confrontation scene with everyone. Which was more uneven to you, Driftmark or the Green Council? I don't know. Because last we come to the Green Council, which, as we've all said, some people had problems throughout it. Actually, I thought the direction was great in terms of camera work by Claire Kilner. Story-wise, as I've said, I was a little uneasy with Alicent not being in on the coup at first. It makes more sense when you go that TV Alicent doesn't like killing people, and they've shown that, like when she acts Daenerys Strong killing his family. So, okay, in the TV show, her father would leave her out of the coup because he knows she wouldn't be up for assassinating people. I get that. This is another one of those, it falls under the umbrella of, I wish you had a few more scenes setting this up, or in other scenes, Alicent, like at the end of Driftmark, Alicent seemed convinced that she would need to have a coup later. But I guess her thing is that she wants to pressure Viserys into declaring them bastards. And episode 8, at the dinner, they do show her, she's human. She is kind of, maybe we want peace. Maybe there can be something, I don't know. They needed more scenes showing her doubt, so it didn't seem as jarring when it came in episode 9. But overall, it's not a problem. And some people didn't like the search for Aegon stuff. I thought that was good. Like Preston Jacobs said that he was good to him because it's peeling back the layers of, we never really saw what kind of person Aegon was that much. Even we vaguely know, he's assaulted a maid, he's kind of a drunk, but really seeing that he's just in the seedy underbelly of the city, he doesn't want to be king, they have to drag him kicking and screaming, peeling back the layers like that and saying, well, I was 13, he took me to a brothel, all of that actually worked for me. The big thing on it is the Rhaenys thing, which we've already covered this. The episode 10, right at the start prominently, they gave an explanation, which was decent. I don't think it's even spectacle. It's they wanted a character arc for Rhaenys, and I thought giving Rhaenys more to do is a good idea. And we had leaks months in advance saying they changed it to give Rhaenys more to do, that she'll be in the Red Keep, have a face-to-face confrontation with Alicent, but then sneak into the dragon pit, steal her dragon, and escape. That all sounded great. It didn't mention she has a clear shot at Aegon and Alicent and chooses not to kill them. That hit us all by surprise. And I think the way they set it up was just a little clunky. That, again, I've already said this, you needed more scenes establishing that Rhaenys doesn't know she's on Rhaenyra's side. Because in the TV universe, The previous day, Rhaenys started the trial with Vaemond, thinking that she was opposing Rhaenyra's son's inheriting, and grudgingly settles on, oh, okay, we'll have a marriage alliance to unite Baela and Jace and Rhaena and Luke. Okay, that's not quite up to the level of, voluntarily fighting someone in a war and kinslaying. But you needed more scenes that, well, is she not on Rhaenyra's side, or longer version of the Rhaenyra Alicent thing, or I don't know. So it was a little clunky there that they needed more scenes. It's not a spectacle thing, it's a we needed more scenes thing, because it is an arc with a beginning, middle, and end. By episode 10, I think they should have aired them back to back. So some will say, oh, episode 9 was the worst of the season. No, there were good elements in it. I actually, Driftmark was a little weirder for me, but again, for reasons, because this is everyone's first day, the acting is a little off. Compared to the acting in the middle of the Green Council, like just Otto yelling at Alicent in their private chambers was a really well done one-on-one scene. So it depends on what you want. That I wouldn't put that bottom of the barrel or anything. So I can't easily go, oh, this was the worst episode. Driftmark had problems for me. I would say I think Rogue Prince was more consistent than either of those two episodes. So just the answer to this is more episodes, more time to set things up. That this isn't like with Benioff and Weiss, where they were doing weird things and then we were thinking up explanations for them, honeypotting. We're not honeypotting the Rhaenys thing. They gave an explanation. It was just a little choppy, that you needed to say subtly that they're changing their mind, or the Driftmark stuff with some technical things, and we'll see where they're going with other stuff. But that's the bottom of the season, and I don't even think that's an issue with one specific director or writer, because Sarah Hess wrote other great things, and even Condell Singh, she wrote like 85% of the story. She's my right hand on this. She's my hand of the king. It's just, it was that one episode. Like, I really liked episode 6. That was her. Episode 9 was Claire Kilmer, who also did episode 4, which I think is the best directed episode of the season, better than episode 8. So the writing, the story, that's just where things were getting a little mooshed in the second half of the season, squished together because of the lack of 3 extra episodes. But episodes 1 through 5, that was just really a micro season unto itself and very coherent. But turning back to the top of things, episode 8, really good. Climax of everything. Climaxes are obviously great, but for any story arc, this is Viserys' last thing, but episode 3 and 4, I find myself rewatching those for pleasure. Even more so than just research. Like, I am taking time to just rewatch them, and eagerly. Top of the list there, episodes 3 and 4 there. And the work they did, and the confidence it gave me, and how they can handle when they need to pad out things, or expand on things that the books don't really mention that well. Look how well they handled the Royal Hunt. Look how good the camera work can be in episode 4. And just everything coming together in episode 8. That's generally the categories I would rank them in. I'm not putting them in a linear list of 1 through 10. Just 8, 4, and 3 are kind of near the top. Rank them as you will. And also, episode 1 is kind of on the fence, A to maybe even S, depending on how you do it. But this is an embarrassment of riches. It was a really good season. And this is what I spent the first video talking about. The only issues are, how do you deal with it's a gray character, will always be a challenge, and we need more seasons or more episodes. Coming in part 3, it's just me praising, look how great the cinematography was. That'll be a whole series on my channel. This is just the 1 hour I'm devoted mostly to the first episode. I already recorded most of them, tacking on some parts there. I'll revisit it, but I don't want people to forget it. Of visually how better this show is, because real writers and directors are actually in charge. Well, there were directors on the other show. Just how different even a Sapochnik episode, the first episode, was, because Benioff and Weiss insisted on nothing but vanity shots and tight close-ups of the lead actors emoting with their faces with no dialogue, and they think that's what drama is. Whereas these guys are real writers who delegated things to the directors, let them do the cinematography, and had characters convey things through dialogue, and how they play off of that. It's an entirely different world. So I assume a lot of you are going to be arguing about the specific rankings in the comments, but generally I'm not seeing to like Driftmark is a divisive one because it was uneven. Some people weigh the good parts more than the bad. Some people would rank Rogue Prince pretty low. I think, well, it was consistency is a thing. Do you rank something glass half full or glass half empty? Please don't just rank I loved that one scene in an episode. It has to be the episode as a whole, taken in context. Well, there were good parts, but bad parts. It was inconsistent versus, oh no, I liked the whole thing. It was really good from start to finish. So, like and subscribe. Tell me what you think. This is just still catching up on our overview of season one. And moving on from this, I'm going to be doing topical analysis videos, not just episode rankings. And I'm going to make a schedule video going over all this after the cinematography video.